The judge's patience snapped. "Speak up, Miss Petrova," she barked. But when the young woman leaned in and whispered a classified call sign, the entire courtroom fell deathly silent. A ghost had just taken the stand. The military courthouse didn't hum, it buzzed with a sterile, anxious energy under the cold glare of fluorescent lights. The air, thick with the scent of stale coffee and palpable tension, seemed to cling to the dark wood of the benches and the somber flag standing sentinel behind the judge's bench. It was the third day of the court-martial of Major Ben Carter, and the proceedings had settled into a grim, predictable rhythm. In the back row, a ghost was learning how to be invisible. Anya Petrova sat perfectly still, a deliberate study in unremarkable. Her fiery red hair, a feature that would normally draw the eye, was ruthlessly scraped back into a severe bun at the nape of her neck, as if punishing it for its vibrancy. Dressed in a simple, dark gray pantsuit that could have been bought off any department store rack, she blended into the drab gallery. She looked to be in her early 30s, with pale skin and a face that held a quiet, unnerving stillness. But it was her eyes, the color of ice on a winter lake, that betrayed the facade. They missed nothing, sweeping the room with an unnerving, analytical calm. To the casual observer, she was a law student, maybe a junior journalist. Her hands, resting on a plain notepad, were steady as she made sparse, cryptic notes. She was a stark contrast to the uniformed personnel who filled the room, their medals and ribbons a testament to their service. She wore no such markers. She was just a civilian. The man on trial, Major Ben Carter, looked like a hollowed-out version of the decorated officer he was. His dress uniform, usually a symbol of pride and strength, seemed to hang from his slumped shoulders. Accused of gross negligence during Operation Sunstone, 2 years prior, a mission that resulted in the loss of an entire elite special forces team, he stared blankly at the prosecutor, his face a mask of exhausted resignation. At the defense table, Major Julian Croft, Carter's counsel, projected an aura of slick, unassailable confidence. His suit was impeccably tailored, and a flash of an expensive Swiss watch on his wrist punctuated his every gesture. He exuded an air of aristocratic disdain for the proceedings, as if the whole affair was beneath him. Presiding over it all was Colonel Evelyn Reed. With a helmet of steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and a pair of half-moon glasses perched on her nose, she was the very picture of judicial authority. She had a habit of peering over the rims of her glasses, a look that could make even seasoned generals feel like errant schoolboys. Her patience was legendarily thin. In the gallery, a man with a weathered face and a shallow, pale scar bisecting his left cheek watched the proceedings with a professional eye. Colonel Marcus Shaw, retired, had trained more elite operators than anyone in the building. He noticed the civilian woman in the back. Not her appearance, but her posture. The absolute economy of her movements. The way she sat, perfectly balanced, ready to spring. It was a posture he knew well. He drilled it into his best students. A flicker of curiosity disturbed his otherwise stoic expression. When the prosecutor announced, "The prosecution calls Anya Petrova," a ripple of mild confusion went through the room. As Anya stood and moved toward the witness stand, her walk was smooth, silent, and deliberate. It was the walk of a predator, and Colonel Shaw leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Anya took the stand and was sworn in, her ice-blue eyes fixed on a point just over Colonel Reed's shoulder. Her composure was absolute. "Please state your name and current occupation for the record," Colonel Reed instructed, peering over her glasses. "Anya Petrova. Civilian analyst, under contract with the Department of Defense." Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper of sound, forcing the court reporter to lean forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. The young prosecutor began his questioning. "Miss Petrova, can you describe your role in the intelligence assessment for Operation Sunstone?" "I analyzed signal intelligence and satellite reconnaissance pertaining to the target area," she replied, her voice remaining frustratingly quiet. "I identified discrepancies in the threat assessment provided by third-party sources." "And what was your recommendation based on these discrepancies?" I formally recommended a 48-hour operational delay to allow for a dedicated drone surveillance pass to verify enemy strength and disposition. My report flagged the provided intelligence as unreliable. Was that recommendation followed? No, it was not. The defense attorney, Major Julian Croft, rose for his cross-examination. He moved with the smooth confidence of a shark circling its prey. Miss Petrova, he began, his tone dripping with condescension. You were a civilian analyst, correct? Reviewing data from a secure office thousands of miles away. That is correct, Anya said evenly. Croft smiled, a thin, predatory slash. And what is your security clearance level, exactly? I'm curious how a junior analyst gained access to operational planning for a Tier 1 asset. My clearance was sufficient for the task I was assigned. I see. Croft paced before the stand. With all due respect, Miss Petrova, some of these tactical protocols are older than you are. What direct, practical field experience do you possess that would grant you the insight to question an on-the-ground commander's intelligence? Objection. Argumentative, the prosecutor said, almost tiredly. Sustained, Colonel Reed snapped, her gaze fixed on Anya. But the question of experience is relevant. Answer the question, Miss Petrova. Be specific. Anya paused, her eyes briefly flicking toward Colonel Shaw in the gallery. My field experience is classified. Croft let out a soft, derisive chuckle. How very convenient. So we are to trust the judgment of a remote data entry clerk with a mysterious, classified past over that of a decorated field officer. As he continued his attack, Anya's responses became a weapon. She began to dissect the mission parameters with a chilling level of precision that went far beyond any analyst's purview. The team's primary communication, she explained, her voice still infuriatingly low, should have been on a frequency-hopping sequence tied to the KSAT-12 constellation's uplink. If compromised, the fallback protocol involves burst transmissions on a predetermined HF band, authenticated with a one-time pad that I personally encrypted. A hush fell over the military personnel in the room. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. That level of detail wasn't in any standard briefing. In the gallery, Colonel Shaw was no longer just curious. He was rigid, his mind racing, trying to place the calm, icy demeanor, the impossible depth of knowledge. The scar on his cheek seemed to stand out against his suddenly pale skin. Colonel Reed's patience finally shattered. She leaned forward, her voice sharp as cracking ice. Miss Petrova, I have asked you repeatedly to speak up. This court cannot function on whispers. This is your final warning. Speak up. Croft seized the moment, a smirk playing on his lips. Perhaps the witness's reluctance to speak clearly stems from a lack of confidence in her own testimony, Your Honor. That's enough, Major, Reed warned, but her eyes never left Anya. The room was coiled tight with tension, waiting for the young woman to finally break or raise her voice. Anya Petrova did neither. Instead, she locked her gaze directly with Colonel Evelyn Reed's. For a long, silent moment, the two women stared at each other across the courtroom. In that look, something ancient and heavy passed, a flicker of dawning, horrified recognition in the judge's eyes, quickly suppressed by years of judicial discipline. Anya then leaned closer to the microphone, so close her lips almost touched the mesh. The entire room seemed to lean in with her, straining to hear. The silence was absolute, a crushing weight. Then, she whispered. Her voice, though barely audible, struck the room like a lightning bolt. Wraith Actual, Echo, 7. The effect was instantaneous and electric. Colonel Reed's gavel slipped from her numb fingers, clattering onto the polished wood of the bench with a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the dead silence. The court reporter's hands froze above her keyboard, her mouth agape. At the prosecution table, the young lawyer's pen dropped from his hand and rolled silently onto the floor. Major Ben Carter, the accused, flinched as if he'd been physically struck. His head snapped up, his face drained of all color, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. In the gallery, Colonel Marcus Shaw shot to his feet, a choked gasp escaping his lips, before he slowly, mechanically, sank back into his seat. The scar on his face was a livid white line. "My God," he breathed to himself. The courtroom was a frozen tableau of shock. Anya Petrova straightened up, her posture shifting from that of a meek analyst to something else entirely. Something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Her voice, when she spoke again, was still quiet, but it now possessed a terrifying authority that commanded utter obedience. "I was the operations specialist on Operation Sunstone," she said, her ice-blue eyes sweeping over the stunned faces. She reached into her simple briefcase and pulled out a battered, black object. It was a military-grade data slate, its screen a spiderweb of cracks. She held it up. "This contains the mission's true logs. The ones that weren't falsified for this tribunal." She turned her gaze to the defendant. "Major Carter is not responsible for the loss of my team. He was following a direct, authenticated order from High Command to abort the extraction and abandon us to be slaughtered." A young captain in the front row, his face flushed with outrage, jumped to his feet. "This is preposterous. Commander Anya Petrova, leader of Task Force Wraith, was declared killed in action 2 years ago. I was at her memorial service." Before the judge could restore order, Colonel Shaw's voice cut through the air, low and steady. "Sit down, Captain." He stared at Anya, his expression one of profound awe and sorrow. "Look at her eyes. You serve long enough, you learn some things can't be faked. No one forgets those eyes." The courtroom erupted into a chaotic murmur of disbelief and frantic whispers. The ghost of a legendary commander had not only returned from the dead, she had just accused the very system she served of a monstrous betrayal. Colonel Reed pounded her gavel, the sound hollow and unconvincing. "Order. This court will recess." "With all due respect, Colonel," Anya's quiet voice sliced through the chaos, silencing it once more. "I've waited 2 years to speak. I believe I'll finish now." It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact. Colonel Evelyn Reed, a judge known for her iron will, slowly lowered her gavel and sat back in her chair, her authority completely usurped. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Permission granted." "Task Force Wraith," Anya began, her voice a clear, cold thread weaving through the stunned silence, was a Black Ops unit. Our existence was classified above top secret. Operation Sunstone wasn't about a high-value target. It was about investigating a leak. Advanced American weapons systems were appearing in the hands of insurgent groups, and our mission was to find the source. She powered on the cracked data slate. A dim light glowed from the damaged screen. "We found it." A distribution network funneled through a private military contractor. And the documents we recovered linked the entire operation directly to General Wallace. A collective gasp swept the room. General Wallace was a decorated, 4-star hero, a political powerhouse on the verge of a major appointment. "We transmitted our findings moments before our position was compromised," Anya continued relentlessly. "That transmission was intercepted and buried. Our extraction was cancelled. We were designated acceptable losses to protect Wallace." Major Carter finally found his voice, hollow and broken. "I received a direct order from General Wallace's own command channel. He told me the team was already lost, that it was a recovery, not a rescue." "We weren't lost," Anya said, her voice softening for the first time with a flicker of remembered pain. "We were alive, and we were calling for you." Anya turned a page on her digital display. "And now, for you, Colonel Reed." She looked directly at the judge. "This is the abort order for Operation Sunstone, the one that condemned my team to death. It bears your digital signature." She projected the image onto the courtroom monitors. Colonel Reed stared at it, her face a mask of horror. "No," she whispered. I never." "I know," Anya said, her voice gentle. She swiped the screen. A new document appeared. And this is the original operational authorization for Task Force Wraith. The one you signed a week earlier. She projected it next to the first. The cryptographic signatures don't match. The abort order was a forgery. A very, very good one. Colonel Reed stared at the two documents, her hands trembling. The weight of 2 years of secret, crushing guilt lifted, replaced by a wave of nauseating betrayal. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at Anya, no longer a judge to a witness, but one officer to another. "I've lived with this," she said, her voice choked. "I believed I made a call that got you and your entire team killed." From the gallery, Colonel Shaw spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I always wondered, Evelyn. It was never your character to abandon a team. I knew you wouldn't do it." The truth hung in the air, vast and terrible. The judge herself was a victim, a pawn in a conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of power. Just as this revelation settled, the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resounding bang. A team of stone-faced military police entered, flanking a stern brigadier general whose uniform bore the insignia of the Inspector General's office. He strode down the center aisle with an air of absolute purpose. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Colonel Reed demanded, her judicial composure snapping back into place like a shield. "Colonel Reed," the general announced, his voice booming in the still room. "I am Brigadier General Foster. My office received an anonymous, encrypted data package 12 hours ago. It contained extensive and credible evidence of high treason, weapons trafficking, and conspiracy involving Lieutenant General Wallace." He stopped and turned his gaze to the witness stand. "I was informed there might be connected, unscheduled testimony occurring here today." Anya allowed herself the faintest of smiles. "Right on time, General." Foster approached her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and profound respect. "You would be Commander Anya Petrova." "I would," she confirmed. "We have a great many questions for you, Commander." "And I have 2 years' worth of answers," she replied, holding up the cracked data slate. "General, my evidence chain is airtight. From weapons serial numbers to Wallace's offshore accounts. This time, there is nowhere for him to run." The courtroom began to buzz again, but this time with the energy of a dam breaking. Major Croft, the once arrogant defense attorney, stood silently by his table, his face ashen, his expensive watch now seeming like a cheap trinket. He was utterly irrelevant. General Foster addressed the bench. "Colonel, with the court's permission, I am placing all evidence presented here under IG custody. Commander Petrova will be taken into protective custody pending a full investigation. As of 30 minutes ago, a warrant was served on General Wallace. He is being detained as we speak." A wave of relief so profound it was almost painful washed over Major Carter's face. He was free. Colonel Reed struck her gavel one last time. "This court is adjourned until further notice. Major Carter, in light of this extraordinary testimony, you are released from custody, and all charges are suspended pending a full review." As MPs began to secure the room, Major Carter approached the witness stand, his steps unsteady. He looked at Anya, his eyes filled with a dawning, terrible understanding. "I don't understand," he stammered. "Why would you do this for me? I'm the one who left you behind." Anya met his gaze, her icy eyes softening with something that looked like empathy. "Because I heard your voice on the comms that day, Major. I heard your hesitation. You questioned the abort order 3 times before complying. You were another victim of the same betrayal. The guilt belongs to those who give the orders, not the honorable soldiers they manipulate." The chaos of the courtroom slowly subsided, leaving behind a core group of people bound together by the day's shocking revelations. Anya, no longer a witness but a commander, turned to a small, quiet group in the gallery who had been watching the entire spectacle with growing, horrified recognition. The families of her fallen team. She approached them slowly, her movements gentle. She addressed a middle-aged woman with tired, hopeful eyes. "Mrs. Reeves. Your son, Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves. He was our comm specialist. A genius. He was the one who first broke the encryption on the shipping manifests." She then turned to an older man clutching a small pin on his lapel. "Lieutenant Farron, your daughter. She was our medic. Her last act was applying a tourniquet to my leg that saved my life." The formal proceedings were over, the human cost was now taking center stage. As the sun began to set, casting long, golden shafts of light through the tall courthouse windows, Anya opened a sealed compartment in her bag. She carefully removed a small, waterproof case containing the personal effects of her team, items she had carried for 2 years. For Mrs. Reeves, a tarnished silver compass. "He said it always pointed north, always showed the way home," Anya said softly. "He found his way home through this truth." For Lieutenant Farron's father, a lucky coin, worn smooth from years of handling. She won this in a poker game the night before the mission. Said it was her good luck charm. Each item, each story, was a tiny piece of a life reclaimed from a lie. Tears flowed freely now, tears of grief, but also of gratitude and pride. As General Foster's team waited patiently, Anya walked to the courthouse steps, stepping out of the shadows and into the fading light of day. The mission wasn't over. There would be debriefings, investigations, and a long fight to dismantle the network Wallace had built. But the most important part, the reclamation of honor, was done. Colonel Shaw and a visibly shaken Colonel Reed stood at the top of the steps, watching her. Her fiery hair caught the last rays of the sun, looking like a flame of defiance. "Some heroes never wear their medals," Shaw said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "They just carry the weight of them." Colonel Reed nodded, her eyes still on Anya's retreating figure. "And some truths," she whispered, "are louder than any shout." Anya Petrova's story was just beginning. The investigation into General Wallace would shake the military to its core, exposing a rot that many had preferred to ignore. Heroism takes many forms, and sometimes, the most powerful voice in the world is a determined whisper that refuses to be silenced. What do you believe true courage is? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We ask that you please comment with respect for all those who have paid the price for truth. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and share it with others. We are dedicated to telling the stories that deserve to be heard.